September 14th, 2023. Guys, you're looking at a webcam. This is from thehamptons.com. It's in, I think it's out on Long Island, if I'm not mistaken. But I'll give you a link to it. Now, you're not seeing that high of seas, but the swells are starting to build. And I'm going to show you how close you are to the storm. The gray area here is where it starts to get a little rougher. But see these clouds right here, these lines? That's the definite outflow pattern of a hurricane. I'm going to show you that live on the satellite images in just a few moments. But again, remember that pattern. Now, also in Hampton Bays area of New York, another video live webcam, guys, that is giving you a pretty good idea of some of your swells building here. I know that the Atlantic is different from the Gulf, but it looks like you're definitely getting some push from offshore, and the skies are starting to darken. But again, remember that the sky pattern that we just saw. Let's go to satellite images. These are live satellite images from this evening. We're getting these up before we have sunset, and you start to see it in the very corner here now. The guys up in Long Island area, check out these clouds on this outer perimeter. See those long lines right there? That's what we were seeing in the webcam. And so it's going to go from that point, and you see that gray area that was a little further offshore. Let me point this out here. Right here, that's the clouds we're seeing. Behind it, you saw the more concentrated area, and you'll see it as we move forward with this video. And as it moves further north, you're going to be coming closer and closer, guys, to the more stronger sections, more than likely tropical storm force winds. Remember, the storm is supposed to come in right here. So as this edge comes up the coast like this, you see what I'm talking about. The storm is that big. You're seeing Bermuda right there. And guys, I did a video comparison. Maybe I'll pull that up. But you remember Dorian back in 2019 in September, I think it was. It set off here as a Cat 5 for a couple of days in the Bahamas. And I did a measurement on it where the strongest sections of the storm were. And it was from right here in this section of Florida to down into the Keys. That's Dorian. That was a nightmare for the Bahamas. Just look at the sections here that we just outlined. Maybe coming back to this area. And then the total section of a Category 5 Dorian was this big. What it is, it was tightly wrapped, very strong. I'm showing you how far out the impacts will be. And again, you're seeing, let me get this out of the way, these clouds now. If you're live there, if you can see it, you'll understand what I'm saying, but it's not very far behind it. As the nightfall is falling, you're going to start seeing the weather go downhill. You'll see lighter clouds and then stronger rains. It's going to be more difficult to drive. If you can get out of the areas that you have to drive in, do it now. Get back to a safe location. If you're in some of the hotels, like the webcams we were seeing, just make sure you're in your rooms. And we're about to go now to the latest updates on our models, our tides, things like that, and the possible storm surge. Now, again, look at the size of this thing. It's 85 mile per hour, Cat 1 moving north quickly at 15 miles per hour. Sitting here, again, the dark brown area is hurricane force winds, which would probably be very close to 300 miles. Remember, I mentioned from here, in this longitude, latitude square to here, is 625 miles or 26, something like that. And so the tropical storm winds are probably going out twice that far. Add up this section of the outer quadrant here and this section, then you're probably dealing very close to 1,000-mile area of tropical storm winds. So that's why I'm pointing out the area. If you see here, tropical storm warnings. Now, from just off of the tip of Long Island through Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Maine, and then you can see the path of the storm has not changed much, clipping that southwestern tip of Nova Scotia, then moving up through New Brunswick out to sea. But guys, again, the pink areas are hurricane watches. The yellow area are tropical storm watches, but these are tropical storm warnings. And guys, this is going to be critical. Remember, let me do this again. What I was drawing about the hurricane situation, as far as the width of it, tropical storm force winds here to here. Now, you're also going to have a hurricane in the center of that, just probably still remaining a Cat 1 throughout this into a tropical storm when it gets close enough for the land to really interfere with the counterclockwise rotation. This is going to be a problem for the East Coast, these tropical storm winds. And as you get closer to here, the hurricane force winds are going to be very close to this section. So you're not seeing much yet. But 2 a.m. Saturday, that's 2 hours after midnight, Friday night, tomorrow night, you got a hurricane here getting into this critical area. So tomorrow, make your preparations early. Notice by 2 p.m. Saturday, the center of circulation is coming ashore again in Nova Scotia as a tropical storm. Now, not much has changed, but this is the 5 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time advisory on your peak storm surge forecast. Remember, it does include, or here it says right here, values shown on this graphic are inclusive of the tide. So you're still at 1 to 2 feet from the southwestern tip of Long Island all the way up to the U.S. and Canadian border. But guys, this is going to continue all the way through, and probably much stronger on the bad side of the storm for you guys getting into New Brunswick and to Nova Scotia and through that area. If it comes in here, you're going to be on the bad side of a storm, which would be rotating this way, coming in. You're not going to be able to see much of it. It will be coming in like that, but much wider. We're talking about a very wide area, and it's going to be a very strong tropical storm, but it's going to hit you before it becomes a tropical storm with the outer bands. It's going to be a Cat 1. It will only become the tropical storm when it starts really getting into the interference caused by the land. Now, if I back this out, you can see, as I was saying, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, you're into the hurricane watches, tropical storm watches all through this area now, and that's going to change quite a bit. This will definitely go into the blue tropical storm warnings, and before it is downgraded, more than likely this is going to turn to red in much of this area here. But again, look at the width that's moving up. If the center is going to come up into that Nova Scotia area, if it comes from here to here, then you're moving this much mass in tropical storm force winds with you. Bermuda, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So all of these areas, it's time to really focus on being safe, taking care of your family, your pets. If you're in extremely low-lying areas, maybe rent a room or get with some friends a little further to the west. Now this is 27 minutes old, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And something you got to pay attention to this, guys. It shows the Navy model, which is this light purple line, the third one from the right there. It's going to throw people off, and I mentioned it in the video this morning, this S-curve. But it's showing the Navy model pulling it up, appearing to head towards central Halifax. But you see the bend in it here. The Canadian model matches that same bend just a little further to the west. And update at 5:30 p.m. Central Time. Slight changes, not much, but be aware that this thing could curve back to the left. And if they are predicting that, be aware anywhere in here, if you're in Maine, all the way to the northeastern tips of Nova Scotia, then be prepared for slight changes. Now, the European model has not changed much in the last few days. It's still showing more of an impact in the Maine area, not moving towards the Nova Scotia area quite as much, and it has been the most westerly tracking of the models. In the center, it's still moving north as it comes ashore. Instead of, that's your second storm, but instead of moving taking hard right here, you guys in Canada, remember this thing is going to possibly travel through here. You guys in the UK area, all of this area that we're looking at in the north section or northeast section of this map, you're going to be catching a lot of weather. And look how low the pressure is on some of these systems rotating your way. But the models are getting very close to each other. Let it go through. Here's your secondary storm coming through. We'll watch both of them on the Euro model. There's your first storm, that's Lee. Here's the second storm. Very similar pattern. Now let's take a look at the Canadian model. It's got that S curve right before it comes ashore. Take a look at this. Moves to the right, to the east, back to the west. Like I said, it's just a little different from the Navy model. We'll look at that. Here's your secondary storm. Check that out. All the models are showing it curving offshore. It's too early to tell at this point. Some of my huskies are barking in the back. Now the Navy model, let's let this play through. Again, guys, here in central Mississippi, we got our first decent rainfall in several months this afternoon. It was the slow soaking kind. We need several more days of it, but it cooled temperatures way down, and it's such a blessing. Let's watch this again. There's your secondary storm, but Lee is what we need to focus on now. Right here, bam, that is the 16th. 2 days away. It's going to be too late to make any preparations in this area. Again, Maine, you're going to be impacted by some of the stronger tropical storm force winds here. And as we step this through, again, that's the 16th, 17th, as it moves out. Again, this was curving a little harder to the right in the earlier models. Let's watch it again. I'll play it through a little faster. Secondary storm, even in this model, is moving offshore, but it does have an impact on Bermuda. Here we go. Right there. Bam. Notice it gets all the way up through New Brunswick, back out into open water. We'll see how that affects it. It is much cooler, though, but all of the northern Atlantic has been warmer than average. Let it play through here. Stepping up. Guys, you can see right through that area. Kind of getting tangled up with some of these other low pressure systems. Matter of fact, 3 of them in this area. This has been a year for very unusual weather. Guys, we're watching this. You watch it. We'll update it as soon as there's some differences, but it will be no later than early in the morning. Heads up, be safe.